Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Bloom's Communities of Excellence, Idaho's Charter Schools Program Grant Introductory Webinar. Today is February 3rd, and I'm joined by Terry Ryan, Mark Carignan, myself, Kristen McCarver, our communications managers, popped in. And just a reminder that the webinar attendees are muted for the presentation. We will be taking questions and answers through the chat, and then if we have time at the end, we will open up and have questions and answers from you guys. So, Terry?
We're going to take questions and try to give answers.
Yes.
I think it's what we're going to try to do, but who knows. Okay, thanks to all of you for being on with us, and if you go to the next slide, please, Amy. And just real quick, the agenda here. There's some introduction to the federal language we have to share with you. Then we'll just quickly get into the actual application programmatic part of this. And then Mark will take us through some of the finance part of this, and then Amy will end this on sort of what technical assistance is available to you all. So that's our agenda here, and we're hoping we can do it within an hour. Here are the individuals. This is a good slide if you want to get in touch with any of us. Truly the people who really know what's going on. Start with Amy. If it's finance, go to Mark. If you really want to get confusing, come to me and I'll do my best to take you through big picture what's going on. But the detailed part of this really is Amy and Mark. Next slide. So Amy, you want to take them through the federal language?
Sure. Idaho's Communities of Excellence program is a competitive public charter school grant program funded under the Congressional Every Student Succeed Act, or ESSA, which was reauthorized the Elementary and Secondary Act of 1965. A public charter school is non-sectarian in its programs, admission policies, employment practices, and all other operations, and is not affiliated with a sectarian school or religious institution. Public charter schools are open to all students who apply and cannot charge tuition. A charter school receiving CSP funds must use a lottery if more students apply for admissions to the charter school than can be admitted. So we'll give you some background on ESSA. Authorized by Title V, Part B, Subpart 1 of ESSA, which, as I said before, reauthorized ESEA. The CSP provides funding to state entities with the purpose to expand opportunities for all students, particularly traditionally underserved students, to attend public charter schools and meet challenging state academic standards, provide financial assistance for the planning, program design, and initial implementation of charter schools, increase the number of high-quality charter schools available to students across the United States, evaluate the impact of charter schools on student achievement, families, and communities, share best practices between charter schools and other public schools, encourage states to provide facilities to support charter schools, and support efforts to strengthen the charter school authorizing process. The CSP program provides financial assistance to state entities to support charter schools that serve elementary and secondary school students in a given state. Under the program, recipient state entities make subgrants to eligible applicants for the purpose of opening new public charter schools and replicating and expanding high-quality public charter schools. Grant funds may also be used to provide technical assistance to eligible applicants and authorized public chartering agencies in opening new charter schools and replicating and expanding high-quality charter schools, and to work with authorized public chartering agencies to improve authorizing quality, including developing capacity for and conducting fiscal oversight and auditing of charter schools. Public charter schools receive sub-grant funds under the CSP State Entities Program, also may serve students in early childhood education programs or post-secondary students. All right.
That's great.
Thank you.
So thank you, Amy, for doing that. We have to do that under the federal statute, and Amy did a great job. So the CSP overview, as I think Amy was saying there, it enables the startup, the replication and the expansion of high-performing charter schools. And in particular, for our program, the Communities of Excellence, this is relevant to what we're doing in the state of Idaho. Our consortium, this was a consortium that applied for the federal grant. Bloom was the project lead, and we're the grant recipient. We're the ones helping to manage the work. The J.A. and Catherine Albertson's Family Foundation is a critical funding partner of ours. Most of our overhead is actually covered by Albertsons and not this federal grant. The Idaho State Board of Education is not only the ultimate state quality control agent when it comes to charters in all public schools, but they are also an important partner in this. And as is the Idaho Public Charter School Commission, which is the primary authorizer of most charter schools in the state of Idaho. However, school districts and universities and colleges can do that work, and there are some school districts that have, and there are some that are interested maybe in doing it in the future as well. The competition, just the history here from 2018, it was a $400 million competition. 15 states, you can see the list of the states applied for the funding. 8 states won, and we're proud that Idaho was one of those states that won. I'll share with you that we applied in 2017 and lost, so we know what it's like to both have the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. Our grant award originally was about $17 million over 5 years. And in 2019, we received an additional $5,361,000. So we're responsible for allocating $22 million over the 5 years, and about half of that has actually already been allocated through subgrants to schools. The rationale here, you guys, I hope this resonates with you, but our state is growing really quickly. We have overcrowded schools, especially around our metro areas, and this will help with some of the overcrowding issues. We also have a well-established and high-performing sector overall, and there's strong support for public charter schools, not only among the legislature and our state officials, but also among the general public. So we think Idaho is a good place to be opening high-performing public charter schools that serve rural students and our neediest students. Our performance measures, this is the higher order, what people are going to look at when it comes to the work that Bloom is leading, and we have promised to increase the number of charter school seats by not less than 8,200. Again, especially for our most educationally disadvantaged and rural students, we are working with the Idaho Public Charter School Commission to support their efforts, as well as the effort of school districts that are authorizing. We also have had conversations off and on with colleges and universities that are interested in the possibility of maybe authorizing schools in their communities. And there's an evaluation and a dissemination of research part of this that's ongoing. The overall program evaluation is being led by Boise State University. We've got both quantitative and qualitative things that are going on in that space. And we're excited to not only learn what's going on, but hopefully share those lessons in a way that can have an impact on the larger system of education in Idaho. That's the ultimate goal here, is not only to open great seats, but to show that there might be innovative ways and different ways and smarter ways to provide educational opportunities to our children than what we're currently doing. Definitions, new charter school approved in a planning year or first year of operations. I think we'll get more into that planning and first year of operations part when Mark gets into this, but that's important how we think about that. Replication of a high quality charter school, open a new charter school or campus under an existing LEA charter agreement based upon the educational model of an existing high quality charter school. Well, Idaho Arts, I'm not sure if you all know what that school is, but they're a classic example of that. They had a big wait list and they just basically replicated themselves. And then expansion, that is just growing, possibly adding new grades. So let's say you're K-8 and you want to add 9-12. So those are the three: startup, replication, and expansion. What we look at for high quality startups, these are the definitions that we believe get at the issue of high quality. Board of Trustees is incredibly important here. The group the nonprofit board in this state that owns the charter school process, and we think they're important, that they can demonstrate that they know what charter schools are, how they function, how they're financed, how to look at things like accountability and performance. Instructional leader to us is critically important. Who's leading the school, either the leader or the instructional team. We want to know that they have the capacity and the skill set to be able to deliver results. The ability to attract talent, teaching and otherwise to the building. That's sometimes an issue with our rural charter colleagues. However, we've been impressed with what they've been able to get in terms of getting talent excited about working in their schools. The teaching talent issue is a statewide issue. It's not only a charter challenge, it's a statewide challenge. We want to know that your business plan actually works and that there's demand for a market, that there are families that actually want the school that you're proposing to open. We want to know that there's a well-conceived facility plan that works financially, that it's not going to bury you in debt that basically prevents you from being able to provide the educational opportunities that ultimately you all want to provide. We want to know that the model of learning is innovative, and this is something that the State Department and the State Board actually care deeply about, is show us some ways that are different so that other schools can learn from what you're doing. So we do try to encourage some innovative approaches. I think we've seen that in the first round of grants. And then we need a transportation plan for your students. Definitions, replication, expansion. This is a little bit easier to get at because there's a track record that schools have, but evidence of strong academic results. And we put into our federal grant that includes above state average growth and proficiency on ISAT. Those are publicly available data points, and we look at those carefully and pay attention to them. They're not the end-all and be-all, but they're an important indicator to the work that we do. We want to make sure that the folks applying for replication or expansion are in good standing with their authorizer, as well as being in good standing with any lenders that they might have. In short, we want to know that what you currently do is going well before we encourage you or support you in doing more of it. We also want you to target, again, students that currently in this state are the ones facing the largest achievement gaps, and those are the economically disadvantaged, students with disabilities, Hispanic students, and ELL students. That's defined not only in ESSA, but in our plan and in the state of Idaho's plan as well, back to ESSA. Evidence of a wait list, certainly that helps to know that there's a market not only theoretically, but that actually there's a wait list for your schools. And again, strong leadership and stable governance. We like to see that the folks doing this work and responsible for this work are steady. Let's see, eligible applicants. It's a competitive grant process. We have third-party reviewers, so there'll be an RFA. We'll get into that, and then you submit that, and then staff here does not make the determination as to who's approved. That's outsourced to third-party reviewers. In order to apply for funding, you must be approved by a state-sanctioned public school authorizer. So you've already got a charter performance agreement with the Idaho Public Charter School Commission or with the school district. We look at high quality plans, and again, we'll talk a lot more about that with the RFA and how we think we get to that notion of high quality. I already said that, third-party review process. So we're now going to dive into the RFA document. Hopefully this is something familiar to you all and you've got a copy of it in front of you. But if not, never fear, we'll just keep talking. So go.
So I just wanted to remind everyone that the reminder email that went out an hour before we started had a link for the RFA document. It's also linked on our CSP grant page on Bloom's website.
And it's kind of the holy grail for this. We like to think that if you read it carefully and follow sort of the instructions, that you should be able to make a really nice proposal pitch to Bloom for the third-party review process. Here, kind of summarizing what we know the reviewers look for. This will be our third competition. they're really looking for, does the proposal that you present demonstrate that you really know what you're doing? Does it describe your plans? Does it explain? Does it identify? Does it justify? Does it outline? Those are the sort of tag words that our reviewers come back and say, you know, what we're really looking for in the RFA is the ability for the applicant to identify how they're going to be successful and then explain it. So we're going to dive in. Let's just real quickly look at the sort of how you get up to 106 points. So the project goals are important, sort of defining what it is that the school is going to do in line with what our overall proposal is. So we really are looking for school models that are going to be able to serve all kids well, and also schools that have a rural focus is even more points. We'll get down to that on the priority points. Educational philosophy, instructional practices, and curriculum. We'll talk a lot more about all of this, but that's kind of the heart and soul of this, is kind of what's your school going to do? What's it about? How's it going to work for families and kids? Teaching and learning, academic achievement standards aligned with the state standards we talked about. Again, showing that there's actually demand and a market for what you're doing, as well as support. That you're really able to serve all students well. That's where things like busing comes in, being able to deliver a food program, those sorts of things. We'll talk more about the financial management, board capacity, governance structure. You'll get more on that here in a couple minutes. And then school leadership and management. So the team that's actually leading the program, be it a team that's just located in that building, or if it's a team that's connected to a charter management organization. And then we have priority points, and those priority points are 2 points for rural, 2 points for being 50% or above on free and reduced price lunch, and 2 points for high school.
And I just want to remind everyone that we will be going into the rubric and these sections in depth in the mandatory trainings in-person events. You can register if you haven't registered for those. They are up on the website. Please register so that we know you're coming. The first one will be held in Boise on next Monday in a week. So this is the introductory webinar, just gives you a broad overview, and then we can definitely deep dive and answer your specific questions that you may have during those in-person trainings. But I just want to remind you that we do have the question and answer feature available through the webinar right now. I don't see any questions right now, but it's still available for you if you want to type in a question, and then we will definitely get to that today. Our next section is going to be...
Hang on one second. I just want to say one thing. So what Amy said is absolutely spot on. What we're encouraging you is that you read it and really start thinking about how it applies to what it is that you're going to propose, because I think that can be the most useful conversation for you with us, is if you bring your questions and your concerns to those conversations that Amy just described. Thank you, Amy. And then you're going to turn it over to Mark. Yeah. Mark Kerrigan.
Yeah.
Finance man.
All right. A couple things just so you understand how the program works. Of the $22 million that was allocated for the state of Idaho, at least 90% is earmarked for direct grants to schools. So this is a program that inherently does not have a lot of overhead. And of the remaining 10%, at least 7% is used for state-level technical assistance activities and our program evaluation, research, and dissemination. So most of the funds are earmarked either directly for schools or for technical assistance to schools and the chartering entities in Idaho. So of the remainder of that, we have actually more than 7% allocated for technical assistance. Of the remainder is about 2.9% that is used for administration, and that basically covers about 1.5 FTEs of Bloom. But as Terry mentioned earlier, both Terry Ryan's and my compensation are completely covered by the JA and Catherine Albertson's Family Foundation. We don't allocate any of that to the federal grant, nor do we allocate any of our travel or most of our other costs. So it's a lean program and probably could not be run in a state like Idaho without generous supporters like the Albertsons Family Foundation. Our current subgrant competition has different levels of available funding. If you are adding over 450 seats, you may apply for up to $1.25 million. If you're adding up to 450 seats, you may apply for up to $800,000. If you are an expansion or replication school, you must add at least 250 seats to qualify for either for the $800,000 amount. We have a remaining pool of awards of about $2.4 million, which means that depending on the quality of the applications and the scoring, there'll be a determination made of how much can be allocated to each award. And you note that we say up to, this is a grant that is really needs to demonstrate need. So if we, in your grant application and your grant budget, we'll be evaluating the funds you're requesting. The total sub-grant period can be up to 42 months, of which up to 18 months may be for a planning period and up to 24 months for implementation. When we talk about allowable activities, the RFA gets into this, and we've also given you access to an allowable cost guide, but in general, preparing teachers, school leaders, specialized instructional support personnel is one of the key areas that schools can use funds to help both their planning and their implementation. Acquiring supplies, training, equipment, including technology and educational materials, which includes curriculum, is another area we've seen schools use the funds for, especially in the startup schools that really have none of these in place and do not really get a significant amount of state funding to help cover these costs. So the federal grant becomes really helpful in startup schools and replication schools as well, who may have the facilities but may not have the curriculum, may not have the technology, may not have really any of the supplies that they need for those new students. There is several subsections of code that allow for specific types of spending with lots of caveats. So C here, carrying out necessary renovations to ensure the new school building complies with applicable statutes and regulations and minor facility repairs, excluding construction. This is an area that has a lot of rules around it, but for a startup school may be useful if you're taking over, for example, a building that does not meet code and requires some significant financial investment to meet basic local code requirements. So it is a nice part of the grant that could be used for that purpose. There's also a provision that allows for one-time startup costs associated with providing transportation to students to and from this charter school. Again, there's significant restrictions. These expenditures have to occur as part of the startup process, cannot be used by a school that's already operating a busing program. But again, if this is an area that would help your school launch appropriately and provide transportation for students within your area, when we get into the details in the in-person seminars, we can talk more about what those rules are and exactly how you can meet the requirements of law to get those funds. Schools do use these funds to carry out community engagement activities, including cost of student and staff recruitment, which is important. And then F is kind of a nice catch-all, providing for other appropriate non-sustained costs relating to opening, replicating, or expanding high-quality charter schools. when such costs cannot be met from other sources, which typically means state and federal sources. So there's a key component in there that we'll talk about a little bit later about sustainability once the grant expires. But in general, if the expenses help you get started and are then going to be taken over in the future by state and local funds, we can, typically those are allowable. The restrictions, in simple terms, nothing to do with construction or building buildings except for the very narrow allowable cost of meeting code. Note that our application is a contract with the US DOE. We are held accountable for what is written in the grant, and so we hold you accountable for what's written in the grant as well. And those of you who have worked with federal funds in the past will be familiar with some of the activities that we perform, including monitoring, detailed data gathering, and really taking a good look at the allowability and appropriateness of expenses that you submit for reimbursement. Funding cannot be redirected for other uses, so there's specific parts of law that says that these funds cannot go to other costs, including sending money to traditional public schools that are not charters. So this is an interesting one that's come up as a question a couple times with district chartered charter schools, where the charter schools cannot use the federal funds to reimburse any costs incurred by the district. So it's an interesting limitation that schools that are authorized by a district need to be aware of.
And they can, after 2 years, convert to a district school. They have to be a charter. There were some states where you had districts authorize a charter, they would get the federal grant dollars, they would open the charter, and then when the federal grant dollars ran out, they would convert it to a district school. So it was a way for the district to open a school, pay for it using federal charter dollars, but then not have it be a charter over the long haul. That's what they're trying to avoid there.
Yep, and then virtual charter schools in Idaho are not eligible to apply. Reiterating, it is a competitive grant process. We're only funding high-quality plans. The grant determinations are made through a rigorous third-party review process, which is governed by the rubric found in the RFA. There's no guarantee that submitting a proposal will result in funding or that you will receive funding at the level that you request. If more schools meet the criteria to be funded, if they score more than 85 points, then there are funds available. Applications will be ranked to make final decisions about which schools are funded and by how much. In bold print here, we want to be very clear. The request for applications, our RFA document, needs to be read very carefully. It is followed very carefully by our independent reviewers. And we can't say enough to make sure that you tell your story well and clearly. There's a lot of ensuring that you meet the requirements of the rubric, but by no means is this a check-the-box exercise. There are independent reviewers who are evaluating very carefully the entirety of your application, which includes a 25-page narrative, a budget narrative, a budget, and your operating budget, as well as a number of documents that we request as part of the RFA. In total, these artifacts that you're providing are being evaluated by third-party reviewers, and they do need to understand at the end of the day what you're asking for, why, and why does it make sense for kids in Idaho.
Thank you, Mark. All right, Terry, did you want to talk about technical assistance?
Happy to do. Thank you. So, as Mark mentioned, 7% of the federal grant goes towards both technical assistance, research, and dissemination. And so what we're committed to doing is trying to build the capacity for new schools, educators, and community members. So we're having conversations and efforts to reach out to different groups across the state so that they know this opportunity exists and how they can avail themselves of it. We have been working to support the Idaho Public Charter School Commission in their work, including some research around governance. We've got a project, hopefully some of you can benefit from it actually, where we're going to have what we hope are real high quality videos on the do's and don'ts of effective charter school governance. We're also working with a handful of school districts on authorizing practices. You guys, the school operators, are the ones that are, we're just empowering through the sub-grants, the creation of school models that in the first couple of rounds have included IB schools, STEM schools, career technical schools, and others. We are engaging a group to help us with a survey of stakeholders. That includes community folks, that includes parents, that includes teachers, and we're going to share those findings in town hall style meetings over the next 3 years. I mentioned to you the Boise State University and the research that they're doing. There's some supplemental research that's being done. Again, it's a mix of the quantitative using the state achievement data, both growth and proficiency, also using the IRI and things like graduation rates, but we're also into qualitative metrics of what the impact is. And I mentioned to you the surveys of parents, of other stakeholders. This is really important to us, as well as the school operators themselves, to see the challenges that you've encountered along the way, the opportunities, what's worked and what hasn't. That's an important thing that we hope to share not only with our state but other states. And we have technical workshops, TA workshops that we're currently engaged in. We've got, I think, 10 school leaders are going to a workshop in Washington State, a partnership with the Washington State Charter Association, who also received a federal grant. And we've got things going with direct support to schools through technical experts. We're able to engage and bring to bear more sort of targeted, customized support for schools as we go along. I don't know, Amy, did I miss anything?
Perfect.
All right, thank you.
All right, so we do realize that as this is an introductory webinar, there may be folks on the call that don't have a charter yet or just curious about the program. So we've added some slides to give you some contact information for some organizations that you might need. This webinar is also being recorded, so it'll be available in a few days after today. So there may be folks watching this later on that are, like I said, curious and want to know what the program is all about. So we just wanted to let you guys know this is the Office of Innovation and Improvement contact information. We have our program officer is Ashley Gardner, and then Catherine Neely is, she's been super helpful, but I'm not sure exactly what her title is, but she's also at the department. All right, and next, we have the Idaho State Board of Education. The executive director is Matt Freeman. Again, they are part of our consortium here, and that is their contact information. The Idaho Public Charter School Commission, where you are able to get more information if you are looking to charter a school in Idaho. And then the Idaho State Department of Education, Michelle Clement-Taylor, she's the school choice coordinator. Again, if this is all brand new for you, there is a Charter Start 101 workshop. She has forms to sign up for that, and there is her contact information as well. It's a very robust training. It's about 2 full days, and it's highly recommended. And then now we're at our timeline. So obviously today is our introductory webinar. That's today. The RFP will open next Monday, February 10th. We're also going to be holding our first in-person mandatory training for the Treasure Valley in Boise The next day will be in Idaho Falls and Twin Falls in person. Again, those registration links are on our website. And then Friday, Valentine's Day, up in Coeur d'Alene. And then again, we close the competition on Wednesday, March 18th at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We go through really quickly, do a document check. Bloom staff goes through just to make sure that you have everything. We'll contact you if there's anything missing. But then we pass that complete package on to the third-party reviewers. Those reviews from those third-party reviewers should be completed by Friday, April 3rd. And then we go through the process we call management review, where, like Mark alluded to, if there's more applicants that qualify than there is funding, that's the time period we'll be going through to look at that, to actually see if the budget makes sense and how much we would be awarding you. The notice of awards for round 3 is also the first day expenses can be incurred. That is Friday, April 17th. And then immediately after the notice of awards, we ask subgrantees to schedule time to come in to have what we call an individual completeness check with a more specific budget training for subgrantees. And I think that's it for the timeline. Again, just a reminder, applications are due Wednesday, March 18th at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Here are the email addresses for any questions, and we thank you for joining us for this.